Chris, what is our first main topic today?
This one comes from James Lochmann about some breaking news we had yesterday during the show. Hey, John. Sadly, we are here again mourning the passing of another comedy icon, the great Gilbert Gottfried, at age 67. He was well known for his very distinctive voice, which was always a part of his act, and he used it so perfectly for a lot of animated voiceover projects like Aladdin. He was fantastic playing Iago, Jafar's sneaky and conniving sidekick. And even though he was only in one scene in Beverly Hills Cop II, to me, was one of the most funny and memorable scenes in that film. I was shocked and saddened by this news.
As Chris just mentioned, it was yesterday during the final bit of the show that the word came out. Gilbert Gottfried's family announced on his Twitter account that he had passed away. So it was shocking to hear because I felt like it was yesterday, but I realize now it's probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I saw him doing stand-up and it was like, looked great and all that kind of stuff. So it was shocking to hear. It's one of those things that reminds me a lot about like when Robin Williams passed. You remember how many hours of your life you spent watching Aladdin. And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, so many moments in good times and bad times, in hard times or sad times, you could pop on Aladdin as a kid, as a teen, as a young adult, as an adult, whatever, and it would make you smile and make you laugh and make you want to hum a tune and make you feel hopeful about the world and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the day that Robin Williams died, it was the first time that I ever got emotional over the death of a celebrity. A lot of it had to do with Aladdin, right? Gilbert Gottfried had one of the most iconic and identifiable voices in Hollywood. You'll never know if it's got Gilbert, right? Like he just had the best voice, and the voice matched with his ever smiling face while he was doing it. And yeah, one of the most iconic scenes in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise was that scene with Gilbert Gottfried. And so the Aladdin, and he appeared in other films as well. But as a stand-up comedian, the guy was hilarious. And he was courageous as a comedian to a fault. I mean, he would always push the boundaries of comedy. He was the first guy to do a 9/11 joke. And I remember like it made news when he did a 9/11 joke very not long after 9/11. And it was the first time I heard the phrase too soon, because you could hear the audience, if you watch the video footage, yelling too soon. But he would always do that. He would take things, because he had this philosophy, I heard him say once, that the way we as humanity can process things is to laugh. At tragedy, at sorrow, pain, we've got to be able to look it in the face and laugh and whatever. And I always thought that was a pretty profound thought of his as well. And I told you this the other day, a couple of you, but when I think of Gilbert Gottfried, and I know that I will be in the minority on this because not a ton of people have seen this. And we've talked about it a couple times. There was a documentary, a real documentary, not a mockumentary or anything, called The Aristocrats.
Yes.
And it is a documentary about a joke. And it is a joke that comedians know, and every comedian has their own version of the joke. It's the same intro, it's the same punchline, but what happens in between is up for the freewheeling ad-lib comedians to do. And it is the most, what a comedian basically tries to do, for those of you who haven't seen this documentary, it's got all the top comedians in it, but is you do the most vulgar, dirty, like as whatever as you can go.
And his is the biggest.
And his is the best. Him and Bob Saget. Bob Saget's on it was also
so good.
Pretty damn good. Obviously, we cannot repeat any of it here.
You should also give our viewers a warning because it's on YouTube. You can see Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh, but it's dirty.
It's so blue.
Wow. Wow.
But that was the thing.
It's got all the social taboos broken in that one.
But that's the thing, like the comedians, it's like, who can outgrow the other one? It's always who can top who, right? And so this whole thing is like all these comedians telling the exact same joke. And it never fails. Like you're going, but Gilbert Gottfried and that. I used to remember always was hilarious to me. Rob, with the passing of Gilbert Gottfried, when you look back on his life, how do you remember him most? From movies, voicing, stand-up comedy, certain appearances?
I mean, it was always ubiquitous. He appeared everywhere. But I actually tell you, I went back home right before I did Mailbag yesterday, and I watched that scene in Beverly Hills Cop.
If I had something over here, you forgot what's in this hand, and you looked at what's over here in this hand.
I'd forgotten that, and I realized I like Beverly Hills Cop, and I hadn't seen it in years, and it put a smile on my face. And then I watched his version of the aristocrat joke because, oh my God, I'd forgotten just how filthy. Like, just the stuff that comes out of his mouth in that joke, you're like, wow. Wow, it might be the filthiest thing I've ever heard anyone's, because it's almost like 9 minutes long.
Oh yeah,
and it is there's an audio version, and then there's also a video version, and it is filthy.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The basic setup to the joke is this: is that I think, is it a family of four or
Yeah.
A family
of
walks
four?
into a
Yeah,
talent
a family
agency.
walks into a talent agent,
Yep.
a mom and dad, a son and a daughter, and they say, "Well, we have an act, and we think it's really special. We think you make us a star." And the talent agent's like, "All right, do your act. Go ahead." Filthy, 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 filthy. Well, what's the name of your act? The Aristocrats. That's how it always. So that's always begins, ends. You saw the documentary,
I love
Chris.
the documentary.
Yeah, the
What do you
documentary's
think
great.
now about
Things
the
ever.
passing of Gilbert
For
Gottfried?
those playing at home, make sure that if you want to watch the Aristocats,
Oh, I love that.
don't switch this.
I've seen that. I've
You don't
seen
wanna
that many
accidentally pop on
times.
the wrong
It's like
one.
if you wanted to watch 28 Days versus like the
28 days later. Yeah.
So that's one of those things. I love that documentary so much. Gilbert Gottfried, I always think of Aladdin. I loved him as Iago. I'm a big fan too of Return of Jafar. I think it's wonderful. It was Disney's very, very first straight to VHS film, and it's kind of what launched all of those movies, which for the most part usually were very subpar, but Return of Jafar was great. It was really good. He's even great in things like Problem Child too. Like, he's
Oh
wonderful
my
in that
God.
film. He's an incredible performer, and it's wild too to know that he was still just making these great jokes, really thriving still, while he was fighting this kind of degenerative muscular disorder that gave him complications with his heart, and he was still during this time making people laugh. Conan O'Brien brought up, he had this great joke back in the 80s, just this bold joke of he came out to applause and said thank you, but then kept saying thank you for 10 minutes. Just was like, thank you, no, thank you. And that's all he did. and a lesser comedian would not just chew up that stage time, and he just would commit to bits. And I love that about him.
Just to be specific, they report that he passed away from a condition known as myotonic dystrophy type 2, which is a form of muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
That he had been struggling with for a lot of years. Anyway, Aaron, you heard about the passing of Gilbert Gottfried. When you look back at his career and his life, what will stand out to you?
That fucker cost me a car. That fucker cost me a car.
How so?
Because when I first moved to Los Angeles, I went to the bookstore that used to be on Sunset Boulevard that sadly is no longer there. Samuel French Bookstore. It was basically like church for actors.
Yeah.
And I bought a book
Right
that's
by
like,
the Coach and Horses pub.
yeah, exactly. And where you get the hot dogs. And I got this book that was like, this is what you do when you're starting out as an actor. And, there was a whole chapter on ways to support yourself before you're making money, big bucks on a series. And one of them was go on a game show. Maybe you'll win $100,000. So I went on Hollywood Squares and I got
I'm
chosen.
sorry, wait, what?
What?
You were on Hollywood Square?
Come
I
on.
was on Hollywood Squares. Reba was the center square. Martin Mull was there. Gilbert fucking Gottfried was there.
How do we not know this?
And
Love
I
Martin Mull.
made it to I made it down. It was between me and this guy. He was a school teacher, father of two, whatever. And
So
it
it's
was
completely undeserving.
totally undeserving.
Yeah, but you're a poor actress.
I was a poor actress. I fucking deserve a car before this school teacher,
Yeah.
father of two. And so I'm gonna win the car. And Martin Mull was on my side. And there was some question. And then Gilbert Gottfried he did this thing where you had to guess whether or not they were telling the truth and whatever. And he went on a 10-minute diatribe convincing me that what Martin Mull was saying was not the truth. And I should have looked at Martin, but Gilbert was like, come on, Aaron, you gotta believe me. Come on, I'm telling you the truth. I used to work there. I know it. You gotta believe me. You're a sucker if you don't believe me. You're crazy. I'm trying to win you this car, Aaron. I'm here for you. I'm gonna get you this car and you're gonna believe me.
This is so perfect.
And obviously, I would go, I believe Gilbert Gottfried. And they were like, congratulations, school teacher, father of two. You won a car. And I was like, fuck you, Gilbert Gottfried. You cost me a car.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. So for years, I was like, fuck Gilbert Gottfried. Fuck them. I want a car. And then ultimately what I realized was he wasn't taking a car from me. He was making sure that a school teacher and a father of two got
a
the car.
Yeah.
Which
You tell yourself that.
and so, so my own selfishness many years ago made me angry at Gilbert Gottfried. But eventually, I went to church. I slowed down my drinking. I crawled out from under the bridge I was living in. I stopped shooting up. And I finally decided, you know what? That was probably the right move. So R.I.P. Gilbert Gottfried. Thank you for making the right decision and totally steering me off track.
He
that
would like
day.
to know that he self-actualized you.
So
That's good.
He did. I owe my entire resurrection to Gilbert Gottfried not letting me win on Hollywood Squares.
Anyway, guys, the question is for you. With the passing of the great Gilbert Gottfried, what do you guys think about? What stands out to you when you first hear his name? I think for a lot of us, it's going to be Aladdin, but maybe it's Beverly Hills Cop. Maybe it's a stand-up routine you saw him do. Maybe it was Hollywood Squares. Maybe it's the Aristocrats. Whatever it is, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.